Mario Kart 8 Deluxe brought a lot of new things to the table. One of those things being that you can customize your kart with a vast amount of parts, each with their own unique statistics and attributes. These include speed, acceleration, handling, weight, traction, and mini turbo. I'm sure with this edition, many people wonder what the best combination in the game is, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Hey everybody, I'm Rainbow Road Gaming, and let's get right into this. The concept of vehicle customization was first featured in Mario Kart 7, and it was then used again in Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. At first it might seem obvious that the stats with the fastest parts would be the best, and this was the case in Mario Kart 8 for the most part, but there was a big change in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe which made speed a fairly unimportant stat for your combination. Parts that have high speed don't usually come with many other perks, but this was okay in Mario Kart 8 because of a technique called fire hopping. Fire hopping is a process in which you jump back and forth after a drift or boost to elongate the speed boost. This meant that after a drift, even though the boost you got shouldn't last that long because of how low the mini turbo stat is on the parts, you can still get a long boost from it. However, in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, this feature, or glitch, I kinda doubt it was intended. Well, whatever fire hopping was, it was removed and this changed everything. Previously, speed could take priority over everything and you could still get a long boost from a mini turbo. But since fire hopping was removed, this now made mini turbo the most important stat. If you don't quite understand what I'm saying, let me explain a little more. Speed is important, but Mario Kart is all about twists and turns throughout crazy courses, so assuming that you drift through all of these turns, you'll be getting a lot of mini turbo boosts, which brings you to a speed much greater than even the top speed of the fastest combination. And all that speed added up makes for a much faster time in the end. So clearly, mini turbo is the most important stat. Usually even sacrificing all speed to get high mini turbo is worth it. But what stats are the most important after mini turbo? This is a little hard to decide, but I would probably say that handling would be second, traction would be third, and speed would be fourth. Also, one other major change that was made in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was a change in the stats themselves. For example, in Mario Kart 8, the Mach 8 was one of the fastest karts in the game, but in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, its speed stat is only average. So if you think you know stats because you knew them in Mario Kart 8, you would be wrong. So for the actual ranking process of each of the karts and wheels, I'll be doing it in a tier list style format. That means that the worst ones will be F tier and the best ones will be S tier, and everything in between is everything in between. Also, many of the kart parts have the same stats, so I'll be grouping them together as the same vehicle. Let's get started. First off, I'll start with the wheels, and here we are with a surprising amount in F tier. In F tier, we have the groups of Slick, Cyber Slick, and Metal and Gold. These two groups have different stats, but are very similar. Their similarities include not really having any good stats. They're the fastest wheels in the game, but both are completely lacking in mini turbo and really all other important stats, and that's why they're at the bottom of this list. Next, we're at D tier. First off in D tier, we have the Monster and Hot Monster wheels. Usually, the wheels this low down are fast and lacking in mini turbo. However, these aren't very fast and they don't have very good mini turbo. The only reason these aren't in F tier is because they have the best traction in the game, but not much else. Next, we have the group with the Triforce, Off-Road, and Retro Off-Road wheels. Once again, we have some heavily speed-oriented wheels with few other good stats. But these are a little bit higher than Monster and Slick wheels because they have good traction and slightly better handling than those below them on the list. In C tier, we have one group, and it's what you would expect. We have Standard, Blue Standard, and GLA tires. These are all just average. They don't really have any good stats, but they don't have any bad stats. So I think they're very deserving of their spot in C tier. Now we're getting into B tier. First off in B tier, we have Slim, Crimson Slim, and Wood wheels. These are an interesting choice for B tier because they're a little below average when it comes to mini turbo, but they do have decent speed, especially when it comes to anti-gravity, and surprisingly have some of the best handling stats in the game. They're lacking in mini turbo and traction, however, which is what keeps them from being higher on the list. Next up in B tier, we have Sponge and Cushion wheels. These wheels immediately get a high spot on the list just for having above average mini turbo and traction. Although they are still in B tier, which means they don't have much else to offer. They're slow as you would expect, but they don't have good handling, which is not expected from wheels that have good mini turbo, and that's why they're only in B tier. Here we are in A tier. From here on are really the only wheels I would actually recommend using. The only wheels in A tier are leaf and button tires. They're here purely because they have a very good mini turbo stat and very good handling. They're not very fast, but the mini turbo and handling more than make up for it. Now here we are in the final tier, and the wheels that are in this tier are by far the best in the game, and I personally rarely use anything besides them. We have roller and azure roller wheels. This is because they have the best mini turbo in the game by far, the best handling in the game, and even have pretty good traction and underwater speed as well. You could pretty much use these wheels with any kart in the game and it would at least be decent. Next, I'll be ranking the main kart and bike bodies in the game, which I'll be covering in a little more detail than I did with the wheels. So here we are, starting us off in F tier. There's only one group of vehicles in F tier, and this is the group with the Badwagon, GLA, and Standard ATV. If you didn't know that speed wasn't important, you might think that these were pretty good, because they have a very high speed stat. But that's pretty much it. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but there are 4 types of speed: ground speed, water speed, air speed, and anti-gravity speed. This also applies to handling as well. And this group only even has good speed stat in the ground speed, not to mention it has an absolutely terrible mini turbo stat. The only other decent stat this vehicle has is its traction, but it is unfortunately lacking in every other area. Now that we're done with F tier, we can move on to D tier. First off in D tier, we have the B Dasher, Circuit Special, and P-Wing. These karts also have a great speed stat, but are lacking in pretty much everywhere else, just like the previous one. The only reason these karts aren't in F tier is because they have some handling stats and a little bit of mini turbo, unlike the F tier karts. It's too bad these karts aren't very good because they're some of the most well-designed karts in the game, and I love that the B Dasher keeps making a comeback. It's a nice acknowledgement to Mario Kart DS. Next up, we have the Steel Driver, Tri-Speeder, and Bone Rattler. These karts are in a very similar situation as the last one, and they're very fast, but they don't have much else going for them. However, I have them one spot ahead because they have a slightly better mini turbo stat, and actually have a really good underwater handling stat, but other than that, they're pretty lacking. Congratulations, we've gotten past all of the completely garbage vehicles. Everything from here on is at least decent. First off in C tier, we have the Gold Standard, Sneaker, and Master Cycle. So first of all, the Master Cycle has inside drifting, so that means it steers a little bit differently, but it still has all the same stats as the other vehicles in its group, and these vehicles aren't bad, but they're still at the bottom of C tier. Overall, they're pretty all-around vehicles, but they're just a bit lacking when it comes to handling and mini turbo. Nowhere near as lacking as F and D tiers though. They do have a pretty good speed stat, however, and could easily be a very good choice if used with roller wheels. Next, we have the Duke, Standard Kart, and the 300 SL Roadster. These are just your basic average karts, nothing that really sets them apart from the rest, but nothing that makes them a bad choice. That's really all there is to say about these. Finally in C tier, we have the Prancer, Sport Bike, and Jet Bike. Their mini turbo stat is a little below par, but they still have great handling and above average speed. They're very similar to the previous group, but I decided to put them ahead just because they have a little more to offer. The Sport Bike and Jet Bike are both inside drifting, just for your information, but these karts are definitely good choices. But due to their low mini turbo, I recommend using roller wheels with these if you do choose them. Now we're definitely starting to get above average, and I would definitely recommend using any of these karts in B tier and beyond. Also, B tier is actually pretty small, and it kind of feels weird making it like this, but that's just because of how many karts I think deserve to be in A tier. First off, we have the Tanuki Kart and Koopa Clown Car. Now these are some of the weirdest karts in the game. They may seem bad at first because they're lacking in both speed and mini turbo, because most karts usually have one or the other. So at first they may seem bad, but they make up for it with decent handling and water speed, and also the best traction stat in the game. This means that it makes your kart slide on the ground less, and the traction also makes these karts easy to use, especially if you want to use a heavier, faster character with it. Overall, this is a pretty interesting set of stats, and they can be good if used with the right wheels, which I definitely recommend using Roller for. Next, we have the Blue Falcon and Splat Buggy. These karts still don't have great mini turbo stats, but they have an above average speed stat, and this seems pretty average at first. But these karts are actually used for a few time trial world records, and this is for a few reasons. First of all, they have great speed and handling on anti-gravity sections, and are the only karts with above average speed that actually have good handling and traction. This makes them a good choice for certain courses that are a little more reliant on speed. Now we're in the A tier, so all of these karts are very good, and I highly recommend any of these karts. Let's start off with our first group, with the Cat Cruiser, Comet, Yoshi Bike, and Teddy Buggy. Up until this point, none of the karts have had an above average mini turbo stat, and from this point on, they all do, which is the main reason why all of the A tier karts are A tier. These karts have an above average mini turbo stat, which alone makes them a good choice, but they also have pretty good handling and traction, which are also good things to have. But they're at the bottom of A tier because besides their great mini turbo, they don't have many other good strengths, which makes them slightly inferior to the karts above them. Another thing to bring up is that the Comet and Yoshi Bike are both inside drifting bikes. And because of their good mini turbo stat, that makes them probably the best inside drifting bikes to use in the game if you prefer that style. Now we're entering the top 5 vehicle groups, which doesn't mean much, but it's a good indicator of which karts are truly the best. Starting us off in the top 5, we have the group with the Mach 8, Sports Coupe, and Ink Striker. These are kind of an interesting choice for the top 5 because their mini turbo and ground speed are pretty average, but they make up for it with other spectacular stats. First of all, they're the fastest karts on anti-gravity in the game, and that stat is perfectly complemented by the fact that they also have a pretty amazing anti-gravity handling stat, not to mention that they have pretty good traction as well. The reason this is also good is because when they're used in anti-gravity sections, which many courses have, they don't need to sacrifice their speed for handling in mini turbo, because they basically have high stats in all of the important categories. These are karts that are all around really good, especially on predominantly anti-gravity courses such as N64 Rainbow Road, and it's no surprise that they're used for so many world records. However, there's one more thing to bring up with these vehicles, and it's something I haven't brought up with any other groups before. Which one is best in the group? They all have the same stats, but there's one more thing that can come into play here: hitboxes. Hitboxes don't usually make much of a difference, but they can be very important. In time trials, Mach 8 is used much more than the other two. This is because it is able to take slightly better lines. How? Because of a technique where 2 to 3 of the wheels can be hung off the edge of the course to take the turn slightly tighter, a strategy that perfectly fits the Mach 8's hitbox. Small differences like this won't make a huge difference, but it's something to keep in mind. However, in races where you're trying to not get hit by items, the Ink Striker may be a better choice because it has the smallest hitbox. Therefore, it can get hit less. But once again, these are only small differences that really don't make much of a difference. Now moving up to number 4, the Standard Bike, Flame Rider, Wild Wiggler, and W25 Silver Arrow. These are karts that are lacking in very few places. They're a little on the slow end when it comes to ground speed, but these karts excel when it comes to anti-gravity speed, handling, traction, and mini turbo. The reason these are so good is just because they have all good stats. Their anti-gravity stats especially make them a good choice for predominantly anti-gravity courses that might require a little more handling, making these a better choice than the Mach 8 group. Overall, these karts just have very good stats and can be a great choice for any course. These are also especially good in 150cc. I've been mainly focusing on 200cc for this video, but if I was basing this on 150cc, they might be even higher on the list. One more thing about these ones is that, much like the last group I covered, the Wild Wiggler and Silver Arrow might be a little better for that dangling strategy I mentioned, which also works off-road by the way, so they may be a more ideal choice for time trials, but the other two have smaller hitboxes which help them in races, but you can really use whichever you want. It really doesn't matter that much. Now we're getting into the S tier, which means all of these are basically the best, but I have ranked the three of them in order, so let's get on with number 3. At number 3, we have the Pipe Frame, Varmint, and City Tripper. The only thing these are lacking is speed, and that's not an issue because these carts have amazing handling, second best in the game, and amazing mini turbo, also second best in the game. There really isn't much more to explain about these, they're just amazingly fantastic for any course. Once again though, I'd like to bring up that the Varmint and City Tripper might be better for online races because of their smaller hitboxes, which bikes tend to have compared to karts. But once again, this barely matters. So you may have noticed that I said the pipe frame has the second best handling and mini turbo in the game. So why isn't it second? Well, because the Streetle and Landship just barely seem to edge out the pipe frame group. But honestly, these two groups could have gone either way. These two groups are very similar. They both have the same mini turbo, which is, like I said, the second best in the game, but the pipe frame just has a tiny bit better handling. But Streetle has other things to offer. First of all, it's slow on the ground and on anti-gravity, but it's fast underwater. Like, really fast underwater. Like, fastest in the game underwater. Which honestly doesn't help on too many courses, but it's just really impressive. And it also has amazingly good traction. The pipe frame group also has good traction, but it's nothing compared to that of the Streetle. The Streetle's traction makes it really easy to use on slippery courses such as Neo Bowser City or Dry Desert. But these two vehicle groups really are very close, and it could have easily been a tie, but I decided to put the Streetle and Landship ahead. Also, Streetle's used a little bit more for times trials because it has a better hitbox, but you can use either. Okay, here we are. I've gone through a lot of work to get here, but here we are. The best karts in the game are the Bitty Buggy and Mr. Scooty. Yup, these two. They're the slowest and lightest in the game, but as previously established, those stats don't really matter, because every other stat they have are way above average. These have the best mini turbo in the game, the best handling in the game, and the best acceleration in the game, and pretty good traction with that. But traction is definitely the least important of those three, so whatever. These cars just have all of the best numbers in all of the most important categories. It definitely makes sense that more than half of the time trial world records use these, and in terms of which one is better, Bitty Buggy is used more in time trials because of the hitbox, but Mr. Scooty has the smallest hitbox in the game, so it's pretty much the best kart for racing. Or, well, I guess it's a bike. I've been calling everything a kart the whole time, but there's really no difference whatsoever. Wow, I'm done. This video took a lot of effort, though you may be wondering, I didn't really go over gliders and characters, so I'll just go over those right now. As far as gliders though, they really don't matter very much, and when choosing a combination, technically the Parachute, Cloud, Flower, and Paper gliders have the best stats, but these really don't matter very much. And as for characters, it's really a preference thing. The lighter the characters are, the slower they go, which does mean they have better mini turbo, but since the carts you should already have should have good mini turbo, it's better to go with the heavier, faster characters. But heavy characters are also more difficult to use, so if you prefer to use the lighter characters, by all means use them. Like I said, characters are really all about preference. And if you're interested in where I got all of my information for this video, the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe wiki is a great resource for this, but there are many other websites to get stats for in this game as well, and I'll put a link in the description for that website. And there we go, the complete Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tier list. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.